I am so excited for this video. I've been waiting for this so long and it's finally here. Yes, the Excel worksheet is here and I just want to go through with you what's on this worksheet. And the best part is it's free. If you do not like Excel sheet, don't click away because I do have something that is the second best news on this video. I'm just loving this video, by the way. I listened, and here's the notebook. So you can see the size of this. It's like 3 times as big. It's actually notebook size. And I took out all the care guides, so it's not just specific to the 5 orchids. And it has all the information that your Excel sheet would have, and even has a place for you to put a picture in there. So that is out. It's already on Amazon, but you can look at either at the website, which is this, or go over to Amazon there if you do not like Excel. But if you do like Excel, let's dive in and check it out. The first page is just a welcome page. It has a tab explaining what each page is. And let's go to the second page, which is Personalize Tracker. On the Personalized Tracker page, you're going to have to insert the kind of potting media you use. So there is a list of media that are most commonly used. If you don't use that ever, and you never will, just delete it from the list. There's no problem. Then you're going to select the list and sort it. For example, I don't think I will ever use, I use all of these. I don't think I'll do empty field number 2. I'm going to put, okay, I don't do that. I just deleted it, and then I'm going to come up here and sort it from A to Z. So you're going to go through this list and delete or add any potting media that you have. Down here in location at home is the same thing. In this first column, you're going to see where you keep your orchids, because at first you're probably going to have 2 or 3, but that doesn't last long. So you need to group your orchids in groups and just fill out what's the humidity in that spot, what's the light in that spot, what's the maximum temperature, and what's the minimum temperature, because we usually don't know. And those are easy to find. You can just get a hygrometer, and they usually run around $5. It's not much at all. And just go around your house and put them around to see, because sometimes we think, oh, this place is great for an orchid, and we don't realize it gets so hot or it gets so cold. On watering methods, on the same thing, you're going to select the methods that you use, delete the ones that you don't, add them, and click on the next page. Here you have 3 lists. The first is a reference of all the orchids, well, at least the ones that I found to be available for purchase or sale and are easily accessible, and that you might want to look into growing. It's just a table for reference. You can update it if you want. There's no problem with that. If you do, just come to the sort button, click on it, and again, sort from A to Z. Now's where we get into filling out your information. The first column is the genus of the orchid. So you're going to get your little orchid tag, and you're going to find out what the genus is, what the species is in the second column. And this column here is a nickname. Now this is important because, for example, if you have 10 Phalaenopsis, you're not going to, search for Phalaenopsis. Okay, so what's the name of it? You want a unique name for each orchid. And for example, I'm going to put leaf orana here. I'm going to put a Phalaenopsis. And let's just say the species is unknown. Let's just say I picked it up at a supermarket. Can't spell either. Unknown. Price, $19.58. I purchased this online. The date of purchase is important, just so you know in your records of how long you've had this orchid. And for this list, each tab is a little different because I had to format them. So you're going to go through day, month, year. So if the date of purchase, the day, so the 14th of Jan, you'll have to write Jan. Sorry about that. And 2020, let's say I wrote bought it last year. Location, this is where you're going to store this inside your house, and there should be a little drop down here that you're going to click and select where you're going to keep this orchid. So I'm going to keep this in my dining room. And my status. Now this is probably the most confusing button, but it's very important because not all orchids that you're going to have, you're going to keep. Never delete a row in this program. That will really mess up the whole thing, and that's probably what took me so long to make it. So in the status, you have two options. You can choose either you still own it, or you can click on I no longer own it. Let's look at this on the positive side. Let's say you gave this orchid to a friend, or you divided this orchid, or something happened to this orchid positive. Let's not say that he kind of died, but that usually happens too. For your wish list, now this one you can delete. This is either the only cells you actually can't. So for your orchid name, you're okay, I'm gonna want it Oncidium. Price $20. Color, I want a red one. And where am I going to keep it? That's the storage part, because that's always our problem as orchid growers, is where we're going to keep this orchid once we buy it. So that again is going to drop down. You're going to select where you're going to keep this. I'm going to keep that on my shelf number 3, bedroom 2. If you noticed now, when I switched tabs after going to the orchid inventory and wish list, that information is going to carry over into all the other tabs. That's why it is so important that you cannot delete or don't add new orchids on the other tabs. All your orchids that you're going to want to add, you're going to add in the orchid inventory. So identification and background, they already pulled up the orchids that I own. And if you don't want to see, for example, the Phalaenopsis that I gave to a friend, hypothetically, it's already crossed out in red because I don't want to keep information on it. Why keep information on an orchid that I don't have anymore? So I can go to status. I can click this button right here. I can go to unselect the all and collect still own it. Click OK. And that's only going to show me the orchids that I have. It's not going to show me the orchids that have died in my care. You don't have to keep up. You don't have to be reminded, oh yeah, I got to water that orchid that died 3 years ago. So that's what the status button is for. In the spreadsheet, your orchid will be assigned an ID number. An ID number is different than the nickname that you gave it. So don't give a nickname that is just a number, because those numbers are going to be confused later on. That's how you're going to identify which number you have on your orchids. So keep a nickname. The program is going to auto-generate a number ID for it. And just go around and do that for all your orchids. As you can see, the information has already been carried over. The ID number, the nickname, and the potting media. So that's why it's important to go in order. You know, start with the first tab and go through them. In this tab with the repotting roots and potting media, it's all about the roots of your orchid. So when was this orchid last repotted? If you don't know, give it your best guess, because really, if you leave a blank in here, it kind of messes up the system. So try your best, and again, look back at the notes to see what how to insert the right format. Date last repotted, let's say 18th of April, APR of 2018. The root condition was really poor. This one is free to add whatever you want to say in here. This is up to you. Aerial root condition also, it didn't have any. Next repot is in years. If you don't know the next repot, for example, this is an estimate. When should you repot? I'd say every 2 years. If you don't know, you can usually use 2 or 3. Some orchids like a yearly repotting. It will depend a lot on what your potting media is. New roots. When did the new roots appear on this? Now this is going to be hard because we're always conditioned to look for a flower spike. You know, when did the flower spike start? This is a phase of your orchid. It's going to be coming out of dormancy. Phals don't have dormancy, but other orchids do. It's going to be coming out of dormancy. You're going to see those new roots starting, and that's when you're going to put a new date. The next column you see, when as soon as I put enter, it auto-filled. Now what happened was, since this is a program, I programmed it to do 3 months. And of course your roots aren't going to stop in 3 months, but it's just so you have an idea that during the next 3 months, this is what the orchid is going to be doing. Observations, it really liked that peat moss. Yeah, right. And critical issues? No, none. Well, yeah, I'm going to put yeah because this one died. Then you go on to the next one, watering. It already auto-filled. This is the beautiful thing about this. The day you last watered. Well, this orchid I do not have anymore, but you know, I want to give 2 examples. So I'm going to go back there to the beginning in my orchid inventory and change that. Yes, I still own it. Come back to watering so it won't wipe it all out. So the last day I watered this, and this one you're going to have to enter it a little bit different because of the formula. So it's going to be year, month, day. So last time I watered this, 2021, the month was August, so 8, and the day, I'll put the 4th. In the days column, you're going to insert the number of days that this orchid has a dry period. So this orchid needs 1 day of dry period. ppm of the water, pH of the water, the method of how do I water? Well, I soak this little baby. Next date, this will auto-generate for you. So the next, depending on the date that you last watered and the interval that you have, it will already show you what day that you need to water this orchid. Ideal humidity, well, this Phalaenopsis needs around 40%. And observations is it got root rot once from overwatering. On this tab, I want everything to do with flowers. So the size of the flower, the number of the blossoms, so the date it last blossoms, and yes, this is important, you should put in this column. Most orchids will bloom on a yearly cycle, so if you're not sure, you're going to put 12, and the next column will be when you should start to see a flower spike on this. So of course these are predictions, you have to be looking. Awards, you will pick if this orchid has had any awards, so anything in here. Again, write down your observations, it's beautiful. And go on to this tab, Life Cycle and Fertilizer. This tab is the most important tab of your whole Excel sheet because this one is going to tell you when you should increase your nitrogen, increase your phosphorus, and increase your potassium, and when you should decrease all those 3. One thing I want to explain a little bit between the madness of this page right here is the orchid will go through 4 different phases in its life, and sometimes the 4th is not present. I've divided it up so that mathematically each phase will have 3 months to actually add products to, you know, fertilizers to help this orchid get through these phases. It's not that, oh, I'm in the blooming phase, I'm going to add a whole bunch of potassium so that it blooms. If I don't add it, it won't bloom. That's not how it works. And actually, blooming does not have that much to do with potassium. It has more to do with the light. So just so you know that these are the elements that the orchid will use and will consume during these phases more. So if you add this more, your orchid will be healthier and stronger and be able to fight off more pests and diseases if they get them naturally before we can actually add products or chemicals to kill these pests and diseases. So that's what I'm talking about when I divide it into these. So you'll need to write down the day that these roots started growing, the day that these roots stopped. The second one is nitrogen. So when your leaves start growing and your pseudobulbs start growing, you need to do an upgrade. Find a fertilizer where that nitrogen is the strongest concentration. And the third one is the inflorescence. So when the first flower spike starts to form, it's not when the bud opens, it's when that flower spike starts to form, you need to upgrade that. And what the program will do is that next year, 1 month before that date of when it started, the program will warn you, like, you'll need to increase your fertilizer with nitrogen, or you'll need to increase your fertilizer with potassium. Now, it's not that if you don't do this, these things won't fall in place. It's just that this is a way of naturally boosting your orchid to get there. That's how this spreadsheet works. That's the mind behind the madness. Now, these dates will overlap. Some of them, they'll have a gap in between. If you don't want to do any of this, use a balanced fertilizer. Use one that's 20-20-20 all year long. That's going to keep your orchid healthy and, and independent of what phase. Another thing I want to make very clear that this spreadsheet gives the idea of that, for example, like during root growth, I'm going to increase the potassium, but then after the roots stop growing, I never need to use potassium again. No, don't think like that. And that's what this spreadsheet does give that idea of, that during these 3 months, that's all that I'm going to use. And I just want to make sure that you're finding a way to increase these specific elements during these 3 months. That really gives the orchid a boost to grow nice and healthy. 1 month before the orchid goes into this phase, theoretically, because orchids repeat the cycle yearly, then you're going to get a warning that you should increase each one of these elements. And when it's dormant, the orchid isn't going to need any fertilizer. So you don't have to increase, do things to increase. There's not only nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, there's also calcium, magnesium, manganese, boron, and iron, and sulfur, all these different things that you should be finding a way to add into. So look at the micronutrients, look at all these other nutrients that go into your orchid. This one just tracks the NPK. So you need to go in here. It pulled the information out from the repotting. When your roots started growing and when they should stop growing, you'll need to increase the potassium. And you're going to do the same thing. When did your leaf grow? Well, that was the 12th of April of 2021. And it's going to give it 3 months. The same thing as the flower spike, it pulls the information already out. Months of dormancy. If your orchid does not go dormant, don't worry about it. This is just for you to know. A Phalaenopsis won't. A Cattleya. And stopped all is that if it is dormant, you need to stop using fertilizer. So even though the spreadsheet will tell you to fertilize, you need to come in here and say, yes, I stopped all my fertilizer, or no, I did not stop the fertilizer during these months of dormancy. That is the information that you need to insert in your Excel sheet. What the next sheet does, which is this one here, the specific orchid lookup. Now, this is for people who their addiction has gotten out of hand and they don't know where their orchid is or when they repotted it, or they're just kind of forgetful like me. What you're going to do is this page will show you all the specific information about one orchid. So I'm going to come in here and I can find the orchid through 2 things. Remember when I said the ID number and the nickname were important? So I can find it either through the ID number or the nickname. So I'm going to come to this cell right here, orchid number 1, and it's going to tell me it's a Phalaenopsis, it's unknown. The nickname I gave it was Leaforana. The potting medium, River Rock, I bought it online. Oh, where is it now? It's in my dining room. The type of, so everything that you entered will show up here. Now you see that this right here is dark blue. That's because the next watering is, ta-da, today. So I need to water that baby. And here in my hypothetical dates, I need to increase potassium as of starting in August, because then I'm going to be expecting something from this orchid. So if I don't know the number, I can come down here and say, oh, what was the nickname of that? What was the nickname? Let me go back here and check it. Gracivola. So I remember the nickname, but I have no idea what the number is. So I'm going to type in Grassivola, and it is case sensitive, Grassivola. So if you have an uppercase, lowercase, and you type it differently, it will not find it. And it did find it because it came back with the answer 2. So I'm going to come up here, put 2, enter, and all my information that I entered. If I didn't enter it, it will show up that it didn't enter. If I go back to my welcome page, I come up here to data and I push refresh all. That little sound's going to come up, and that is annoying. I cannot get that off. I do not know what I did. Just ignore it and press OK and come down here, and it's going to tell you that I own 2 orchids and I need to water Leafarana today. So you come up here to see which orchids you need watering. Sometimes this won't work right on the beginning. You have to come up here, select, and then you select which month that you want to show in your results, which would be August. And the same thing over here, the orchids that need repotted, you come over here, you select the ones that need to be repotted in 2021, and it will show you, yeah, Grassivola needs to be repotted, and what month. I just want, you just can click around with whatever works for you and see that in action. One thing I just want to do a little heads up. If you come over here and click on this button right here on nickname, I had to test this out like months and months and months. So I had to make up 1,000 names of orchids, and I just threw up anything. So all these names, like A, B, C, cat, computer nerd, daffodil, dahlia, daisy, ignore those. Okay? They're just the names that I had to test this Excel sheet with. That is the Excel sheet, and you can get it if you go to the website at www.orchideria.com slash yeah, now I forgot it. So it's written down here. Thank you so much for watching this video. If it did help, please give it a like, share this video, but don't share the Excel sheet. Share the link to it so people can go to the website. After all, it is free. And leave a comment below of how I can make this worksheet better for you. In all, thank you so much for watching, and happy cultivating.